Hi, I'm Sally-Shakti, and what I really would love to talk about today is writing. Writing, energy, magic, alchemy, just the pure potency of writing as an act, a performance, a practice, a process. I notice that I feel most inspired and alive and empowered when I'm speaking to people about writing and magic and energy and the powerful potential that we have to transform our own inner worlds and participate in co-creating new structures for the external world. So much of the external world, all of the external world that I perceive around me is created and recreated by thought and language and the structures that we have been conditioned into. And when I work with words and begin to co-create new structures, there's a lot of internal alchemy that's happening in that process that supports the dissolution of both internal and external structures of conditioned thinking and beliefs and perceptions, and the recreation of new structures, vibrational frequencies, energetic rhythms that have the potential to have a really powerful and profound impact on ourselves as individuals and the external world that we're all participating in co-creating all the time. And sometimes it's surprising to realize or remember how much power we have when there are bigger, grander narratives that condition us otherwise and condition us to repeat the same patterns and structures that reproduce the same world, the same problems. But I guess what I'm saying right now is fairly abstract and difficult to pin down. And what I would love to do more of is do more interviews, talk to people about writing, about energy work and magic, transformation, healing, practice, and create more content where I'm specifically looking at writing, where I'm reading with some critical analysis of what I mean when I say those things about writing. And right in this moment, I don't have the resources available to me to do both of those things. I don't have anyone else by this oak tree that I can talk to about writing, and I don't have a text in front of me that I could explore through that in terms of those practices and processes. So where I want to go with this is when I feel most alive is when I'm showing up on the page and when I'm writing. And what I'm learning about that through writing, through the process, through the practice itself, is that the form and the content are not so crucial in some sense as the act and the process itself. The form and the content will determine or be determined by what the outcome and the output is. So whether it's a book or a poem or some marketing copy for a client, an academic text, journaling, those might be different forms that I might work within in the process of my writing, or in the course of any given period of time. as a writer. And the content of those pieces will differ according to the needs of each particular form and each particular output. But the act of writing and the process of writing, for me, it's showing up on the page. Showing up on the page is where the real magic happens and where the alchemy is. And for that to happen, actually, it doesn't matter what I'm writing, or what I'm writing it for and how I'm writing it. Because just showing up on the page, just putting words onto the page, is a form of magic in itself, and so powerful for the kind of ritual work and the energy work that I talk about in terms of making a tangible, physical, material intervention in this world. Creating something new that wasn't here, that didn't exist before, on the page. And I'm just for a moment going to talk specifically about journaling, but I could definitely talk about this in terms of poetry as well, and any other form of writing. But in terms of journaling, because I've been journaling again more often, I've committed to a practice of journaling every day again. Well, writing every day is my commitment. And where I want to go with that is that when I was doing my master's and my PhD, I discounted and undervalued a lot of my own writing process. I would have been writing pretty much every day. But if I was journaling in my notebook, which was my primary form of writing, my daily form of writing, I would discount that. I would not value that. I would undervalue that. I would consider that I hadn't written today, even if I'd written pages in my notebook and my journal. The only kinds of writing that I valued in that context were academic writing and poetry. If I hadn't written something academic specifically, or if I hadn't written a poem specifically or been working towards those tasks, I considered that I hadn't been writing, and I would beat myself up because I haven't been writing enough. I should be writing every day and I'm not writing. But the truth is I was writing. I was writing more often, much more often than I gave myself credit for, because I was discounting the forms of my own writing, like note-taking and journaling, that give me the opportunity to show up on the page every day and to transform my thinking. By which, if I'm talking energetically, I also mean to transform my inner world, my inner alchemy. If I was, for example, when I was doing my PhD, if I was journaling and thinking around my subject matter, my topics, my themes, then my thinking was transformed by putting the words onto the page, even if those words never ended up in my final thesis. The process and the act of writing and putting the words on the page was having a profound alchemical impact towards the final outcome of my thesis and my poetry. I couldn't have written my thesis or my poetry without the journaling and the note-taking that I was also doing simultaneously alongside that academic and creative process. In fact, my journaling is often, and my journaling and note-taking are the source material for my poetry. It's interwoven. My collaged pages of journaling and notes are where my poetry comes from found text and self-created journaling. I'm not sure if self-created is exactly the right word there, because I'm always really more interested in the co-creative aspect of writing. And my thinking throughout my PhD developed as a process and as a consequence and as a result of filling up books and books of notes and journaling and thinking around and thinking through the problem of my research, my research question, which for me on an energetic level was all about, is it possible, or how do I create poetry that opens up spaces of energetic equality between people and opens up the possibility for equitable relationship and new ways of relating equitably, energetically between people. On one level, that was really where my research was kindled, and yet everything that I wrote about that and around that in my journals and my notebooks, I would discount because it wasn't academic enough. But it was definitely shaping and forming and informing and changing my thinking as I was writing. And that process is the same for any forms of writing, whatever we might be writing or intending to write. That process is, in my experience, always present. So when I'm journaling, showing up on the page every evening before I go to sleep, which is typically when I journal, but not exclusively, but showing up on the page, allowing myself to bear witness to my own thinking, my own patterns of behaviour, my own traumas and neuroses, my own processes and practices, shadows and projections. That is where a lot of transformation happens. A lot of alchemy, inner alchemy, where my thinking can be transformed as I'm working through that process on the page. And not only my thinking, but my whole internal alchemy. I believe energetically, I really strongly have a sense of writing as an energetic practice, writing as energy work. And my whole thinking, as well as my whole internal alchemy, can be transformed by showing up and committing to showing up regularly on the page, and being a witness to myself and being present with what is moving in me and through me. And that can be in my journaling, as I said, and that can be really in any other form of writing. As I embark on any writing project now, I'm shifting my thinking away from planning out meticulously what I think I want to write about and how that's going to look and what structure and form that's going to take, more towards what is energetically alive in me, what wants to move through onto the page, and then later looking at the accumulation of what I have and deciding what fits and what stays and what gets to be reworked. But it's much more of a living energy. I guess I get that a lot from the writers that I read, and I've been talking about Kerouac recently. I read and listen to books by Natalie Goldberg, who writes in that style a lot, and she also was informed by and learnt from Allen Ginsberg. Yeah, I do have a particular affinity with the beats, and a lot of modern and contemporary poets and writers who I mention often in my academic practice and otherwise. And it's that process of being present on the page and the internal alchemy that, for me, is an organically arising result of a consistent writing practice that really interests and excites me. And I want to write. I want to talk to other writers about writing. I want to hold space for writers to write and for writers to come together and write and talk about writing and share writing. I want to create healing and transformative spaces through writing, alchemical spaces, future-facing spaces where we get to transform our inner world and co-create new ways of being in this world together. That all feels very exciting for me and very alive for me. And I'm also called to mention that I want to create sacred spaces for sexuality, for the same processes, energetic and healing and transformational. And that in some cases, the writing and the sexuality will coexist in a healing and transformational space, a group space or an individual setting. And in some spaces they'll be separate. But I'm feeling, I don't have full clarity yet, but really very energized and excited and with increasing clarity about what drives me, what motivates me, what's opening up for me, and what I'm really here to do, and who I'm really here to be, and what I really want to share. So I'm back at the oak tree. I've been talking for a little while. I appreciate your presence. Thank you.